Hey everyone, it's Jenny at jccards.com, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make your own glitter paste and create some stunning cards with beautiful backgrounds. You guys know how much I'm addicted to glitter paste, and I thought I'd have a play with some wow glitter and create my own backgrounds. So I'm showing you a couple of the colours I'm going to be using. I will be making a total of 6 cards. I showed you a couple of them at the start. I'm also going to be using embossing glitter. You saw one of the colours I'm using there. So for these cards you're going to need glitter. You can use fine, or like this one you can use chunky as well. You'll also need some translucent embossing paste. I'm showing you the white and the translucent here, but I'm only going to be using the translucent. You'll also need some card panels, any colour, and some stencils. I'm also going to be adhering my stencils down with repositionable spray adhesive. That way we don't get any glitter and gel sticking where we don't want it. That will adhere the stencil perfectly down to our cardstock. So for my first card I'm using the Rose Stencil by Catherine Pooler and a panel of Smoke and Mirrors grey cardstock, also by Catherine Pooler. And I'm just blobbing some translucent paste out onto my craft mat. For this one we're going to be starting with embossing powder, or embossing glitter I should say, so you can actually put the paste straight down onto the cardstock. I'm speeding it up a little bit here just because it's a bit boring watching me applying that, and I'm using Turkish Nights, which is one of my favourite embossing glitters from WOW. It's a mix of gold and pinks and it's just beautiful. And for this first one I'm showing you how not to do it. So you'll notice I've not got a piece of paper under my stencil. So it will work, but there is going to be a lot of cleanup. So we'll show you a second card in a minute which shows you the best way to do this without making as much mess as I'm going to make here. So I have sprinkled the embossing glitter over the stencil before removing it. That's quite important, particularly as we're using repositionable spray adhesive. The embossing glitter will stick to that if you remove the stencil before you apply the glitter. I'm now using my heat tool to heat up the glitter and the paste, speeding it up quite a lot here, and you'll see that there isn't any embossing powder really in between the images, and it gives you this great raised, textured, glittery look, and it doesn't come off. Just a finger test, just to prove it. Now I'm going to show you this again, and this time what you'll want is 2 or 3 stacks of just copy paper that I've got here underneath your stencil and your cardstock. And I'm using a stencil by Hero Arts here. All of the supplies I'm using will be listed in the description box below. And I'm applying the translucent embossing paste again and lifting up the stencil and the cardstock. So I've just slipped my hand underneath and behind it. You'll see that there is some embossing paste on the paper, and you can just throw that away. And then you've got a nice clean piece of paper underneath it. I'm now using sea glass embossing glitter, and I'm again pouring it over the stencil before I've removed it. So that is really one of the important things to note if you're using spray adhesive for these intricate stencils, because if you don't do that, the glitter will stick to where the stencil was, because there will be remnants of the spray adhesive left behind. And I'm just tapping it off, and then I can just decant that embossing glitter back into the tub, and it's much easier to clean up. Done. I definitely won't show you the video of how long it took me to clean up after that first attempt, but you live and you learn. And slowly remove the stencil, pulling back at an angle, and then you'll see the beautiful pattern, glittery pattern that's left behind. Now, sea glass embossing glitter is a clear embossing powder with sparkly blue and silver embedded in it, and it gives you this lovely, subtle, sparkly finish. So that's how we can create glitter backgrounds with embossing paste and embossing glitter. And this time we're now going to start using real glitter. So I'm using a panel of white cardstock, and I'm this Alexandra Renke stencil, heart stencil. And I'm adding some embossing paste onto my craft mat. This is translucent again. And this time I'm going to mix it with glitter. So this glitter is Glass Slipper from WOW, inspired by Catherine Pooler. And because I wasn't quite sure how much glitter to use, I've added a small amount first off, and I'm liberally mixing it together with my palette knife, and I figured that wasn't quite sparkly enough, so I went back in a couple more times and just kept adding a little bit more glitter until I was happy with the consistency and how much glitter was in there. It's entirely up to you how much you add. The consistency I had was slightly crunchy, but not too much. This is obviously finer glitter, and so it's quite subtle. When the translucent embossing paste dries, it obviously goes from white to clear, so the glitter will show up much better than it does when wet. So use your judgment. And you can just see some of the shimmer in the hearts as I lift this stencil back carefully. And I'll hold it up here so you can see it a little bit better. When it dries, it's absolutely beautiful, because it dries clear, and that's why I recommend using the translucent embossing paste. Some of my favourite WOW glitters are really chunky, so I really was hoping this technique would work with them, and it does. So I'm using the Harvest Stencil by Simon Says Stamp and Clarabelle glitter from WOW, which is silver and purple, sort of a lavendery colour with big chunks of glitter in it. And you can see it kind of almost colours the white embossing paste. And I mixed it in, I added 2 or 3 scoops as I did before, and I'm just applying it. And it's actually really easy to apply. The big chunks of glitter don't get in the way, and the effect is gorgeous. It almost does colour the embossing paste, and you've got these big sparkly chunky bits of glitter embedded all the way through. And actually this is quite subtle here compared to the final look, because it actually, as I say, the embossing paste is clear. So for my next card I'm going to use my favourite WOW glitter, which is Your Carriage Awaits, which has iridescent, big chunks of iridescent glitter and pale gold, and it is amazing. In the past I've used it in an earlier video about a year ago to make my own glitter paper, and I was really hoping it would work for this. So I'm using a Moroccan MOSAIC stencil from My Favourite Things, and I'm using it on Smoke and Mirror's dark grey cardstock again. And this effect is really subtle, but that's because the embossing paste is still white. When it dries, it's amazing, and you will see at the end of this video how I finished all of these backgrounds, so make sure you watch till the end to see the final look. Now I'm going to step it up a little bit, so I'm going to mix the embossing paste with ink, and we're going to go for an ombre look here, and I'm using Catherine Pooler inks. So I've scooped out 3 separate parts of embossing paste, and I'm just smushing each ink pad next to the embossing paste on my craft mat, and then going to use a palette knife and mix them together. So I'm using Daydream, Skylight and Mint to Be with Bridal, which is slightly chunky glitter, sort of silvery and white. And you'll notice I've got a circle of the embossing powders and the glitters on the top of all of my containers. That just helps me see what's inside them more easily when I'm looking for a colour. And I'm just going to use my palette knife and about a third of the way down add the paste. I've added glitter to each of the embossing paste on my mat, but I'm not mixing it with the ink until I'm ready to use it. And one note of caution, I've obviously cut out all the cleanup here. It's not that messy, but you do need to make sure that you dunk your stencils into water and clean them off immediately. Otherwise you're going to have some concrete and glitter. It would be very pretty, but concrete adhered glitter on your stencils if you don't do that. Same with your palette knife, just make sure you wipe it off in between. And you'll see I'm sort of adding the paste a third of the way down and a third of the way up here. That's the central colour, which is Skylight. and then the third colour will be Mint to Be. And to blend them together, you just have to gently run your palette knife over the edges where they join together, and you'll get a seamless blend up and down the panel. Because I'm using the same glitter in all three, it's actually quite difficult to see where one colour starts and the other one colour stops and the other starts. You could actually use 3 different types of glitter as well. I've not done that in this video, but that's another idea. And look at the effect you get. It's so pretty. It's so sparkly in real life. And then I'm going to go off and clean my stencil in a second. And look at that. So pretty. So I'm now going to show you how I finished the cards. So for this one, I've used Poppy Stamp's Butterfly, which I've die cut from cardstock by Altenew. This is Spicy Yogurt. I've created my own word, Hope. This is from an alphabet die set from Sunny Studios. And the Never Lose is from a set by Altenew. As I said, all of the supplies will be listed down in the description box below. For this one, I've used the My Favourite Things stitched rectangle scallops frames, cut several times from spicy yogurt cardstock and stacked on top of each other. And then the fairy is from the recent Hero Arts kit. This one, I just used a Birch Press Designs Shine in Sugar Script, cut out of foil mirror gold cardstock, and popped on top of black fun foam, and then used a small tiny sentiment, I think that is also from Altenew, on a strip of black cardstock cut with a sentiment strip from Simon Says Stamp. This one I used the Altenew Needlework Motifs Floral, which I'd heat embossed in white and then coloured in with Zig Clean Colour Real Brush markers. And the frames are also by Altenew, cut from silver glitter cardstock. And the sentiment is also from Altenew. And I heat embossed it on grey with white embossing powder, and I added a few yellow gemstones from Honeybee Stamps. Now for this one, I used Ink Road Stamps stamp heat embossed in Cloud 9 embossing glitter, which sort of matched the glitter I'd made myself, and coloured it in with my watercolours. The sentiment is also by Altenew, and so are the frames. And then I added some Nouveau Clear Jewel Drops over the top as well. And then for my final card, this is the Altenew Engraved Flowers, which I heat embossed in white and then watercoloured and die cut it out. The actual panel that you saw me create, I cut it in half diagonally and then popped it up on foam tape onto another panel of white. And then the sentiment is from the same Altenew set, and I love how this looks. I added some Pretty Pink Posh dewdrops as a finishing touch, and that completes all 6 cards. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please consider subscribing to my channel, and here's a couple of other videos you might enjoy. Have an awesome day. Bye!